Hey guys, I want to do a Tafo talk, and a lot of people ask me ever since Plup's recent addition to winning a super major, and he's pretty much up there in terms of top six, top seven, whatever you want to name the big six, the big seven, PPMD, Leffen, the gods. He's up there. He ascended. He's the first player since Leffen to really jump into that upper top tier of players. And a lot of people ask me, well, okay, who are the next tier of people, and why haven't they been able to climb up the rankings to the very top, even though they've been so close for a really long time? So first off, I want to talk about the players that are really close, and I want to bring them into two categories. I'm going to talk about the players that are just below the big six, big seven, if you count PPMD, and the people who are rising up that I feel like have the most potential within like the next like 1 to 2 years. So first off, we have to talk about the 7, 8, and 9 places of SSBM rank last year. So SFAT, Wizzrobe, and Axe. And so I think they all have unique strengths. Obviously, to be top 10, that means that they put in a lot of work and they're really strong players. So for SFAT, I think what I really like about him is that his work ethic is top notch. I think he is one of the hardest working smashers. And when you talk to smashers who really want to put in full effort to training, to getting better, to watching VODs, to traveling, to like playing as much as they can, I think SFAT is up there. Like, he is a guy that works. I don't know of a single player that works as hard as SFAT right now. Now with SFAT, you get a lot of good things with him. His execution's pretty solid. One of the few foxes that can get up throw up air pretty consistently on Jigglypuff, which is a really important skill, although the other top foxes are pretty good at that. He does have a lot of really good matchups, and like there's no really like matchup where you can say like SFAT's like really bad at. So like he's consistent all around. He has potential to beat Mewtwo King, to beat Hungry Box, although it's been pretty one-sided. Beat Mango here and there. There are some players that I feel like there's a little bit of a gap for now. Like, I don't really see him being Armada anytime soon. I don't really see him beating Leffen anytime soon, even though he's done it in the past. Like, I feel like those sets are a little bit fluky, and Leffen has improved a lot since then. So overall, like, I think in terms of like weakness and why SFAT's not quite in the big six is because like whatever he does, like he's just like a step below in like every category. If you were to like assess like player ratings to each kind of category of what's important in melee, like let's say edge guards, defensive escapes, tech skill, approaching, dash dancing, mental composure, like I think SFAT's solid all around, but I just think that the top echelon players are just like one step better than him in like every category. So he's gonna just need like a massive like improvement boost, and he just needs to keep grinding. And I think the other issue that SFAT has is that I think he's very conflicted in what he wants in terms of playstyle, where he likes to play, because he works hard, like he looks at what's optimal and what's the best. So he goes and looks at the European foxes, he looks at Armada, looks at Leffen, and those are really good models to draw your combo game off of. But the issue that comes up is in the neutral game, where I feel like SFAT like kind of wants to play campy, but that's not his natural instinct. His natural instinct is to play pretty aggressively and to force tempo. And then there's like this other side of him that says like, oh, you got to play defensive, you got to play slow. And so like it just kind of feels like he's trying to get the best of every world in terms of like Fox approaching in the neutral game. And then it seems like it's just like a slightly worse version of everybody else's neutral game at the top in terms of Fox play, that it's really hard for him to establish an identity of what he wants and what are his core strengths. So I think that's also really important, is that although you want to fine tune and optimize a lot of your strengths, you also want to make sure that you cater your strengths and your gameplay to what you're most comfortable with. So the decisions and the playstyle you want, there's still enough liberty and freedom to play melee in the way that you feel most comfortable with and see success in. And so I think that's going to be a big question for SFAT, is like, what does he want to do with the neutral game? Because it feels like he's not reaching that natural instinct where melee is so fast that you want to go on gut instinct when you get to these really quick decisions. Like, you don't want to think twice. And I feel like because he's so conflicted, a lot of the things he does, he like hesitates and he thinks and he second guesses himself a lot. So that's like one big thing that I think he can work on. But if he does figure all that out, like, and he just gets a little bit better in every facet, then I think he can slowly climb up continually. Now with Wizzy, Wizzy's another really solid player, and I think the big thing about Wizzy to highlight his strengths is that he like rarely loses to people worse than him. Whereas you'd see these like random sets over the years where like he'd lose to Dark Rain, although he lost to L at Big House. I think that's the exception to the rule. Like I think when you look at Wizzy's brackets, like whenever he went to Apex or Evo, like in like 2013, 2014, 2015, you were never quite sure like how well Wizzy was going to place. Like if you played fantasy back then, like you'd invest a lot of money into Wizzrobe and find that he would like bomb and get 49th. But unfortunately now, like he pretty consistently finishes at worst like 9th, if not 13th. And even when he has a bad bracket, he still gets to 9th at big tournaments. So I think the consistency has definitely gone there, and that's a really big strength of Wizzy to keep him at like the number 7 through 9 range. It's like pretty much he'll beat everybody worse than him, and then occasionally he'll take a set to people that are in the top 6. Now the issue with Wizzy is just I don't really want to blame character, but it's just like although Wizzy has gone really, like close, sometimes by close, like getting to game 5 here and there, I think he still has a long road to beat Mango, to beat Mango and beat Plup. Especially I think those are 2 matchups that are going to be really hard for him. And for him to contend with the Big 6, he needs to start winning. Like if you're going to be in the talk of the Big 6 or be in that category, like if you have 2 bad matchups where you're like rarely winning, where it's like a 90-10 not in your favor, then at least you have to go like 50-50 with the other ones. With the other Big 6 members. And I can see him being like a slight underdog against Leffen, like where like he wins like 30 to 40% of the sets. Although he's taking Armada pretty close, like I feel like Armada wins like 75% of the time, and I still think Mew King wins like 75 to 80% of the time. And like even though like he's taking a couple sets against Hungrybox, I still think Hungrybox is heavily favored. So unfortunately, I think Wizzy is kind of stuck just by virtue of character, like in his playstyle that. It's going to be really hard for him to advance. And I'll elaborate on playstyle. So Wizzy's playstyle is like very, it's very flowcharty, which isn't a bad thing. His flowcharts are very good. And it kind of reminds me of Smash 64 where, you play safe, you play these elaborate neutral game zones. And that's what Wizzy's really comfortable with. Like he's really patient and like he will understand like what he can react to and what he's looking for. So if you're not familiar with like how Wizzy plays, like, you can just get mollywop because you don't realize the things you do are unsafe, and then he racks and then hits you and then like tech chases you to oblivion. Now the issue with this is that it doesn't really force with Wizzy's playstyle is that when you play people that can attrition you or play even more patient than you, then you're really very ever going to beat a person that has the same skill set as you, but they do it better. And so that's the kind of the issue I see with Wizzy is that when he plays against like a Hungrybox or Armada who also play like a very safe reactionary style, but the additional aspect is that Hungrybox and Armada can also force tempo too. I think that's a huge weakness of Wizzy. And Wizzy tries. Sometimes there's some matchups where he's forced to dictate the tempo and take initiative because he's never going to find a good enough spot against like good players. And when he plays against Falco, just because of how laser works, he's going to have to go in. Now the issue is his gambles and his reads are very poor, in my opinion, in terms of just like raw reading in action and trying to make a really big call out. Sometimes he'll just randomly run across the stream and grab, and sometimes those are good. But overall, Wizzy's like call out game in terms of trying to make these big reads when he needs to aren't as good as like the other players and not even as good as people that are like ranked below him. So I think that's like the one weakness that Wizzy has. Overall, Wizzy's just a strong player though, and like I don't want to bash him. I think his decision tree is his punish game, his tech is so consistent, and that's gonna just like alone carry him forward because even in like when he plays against like a top 15 player or when you have like 2 top 15 to top 20 level players competing, like sometimes it just really boils down to having doing less mistakes, and that's just I'll get it to you later. I'm actually sorry about that. So where's my train of thought? So Wizzy, overall very strong. I just think that he needs to also learn how to dictate tempo and dictate pace better. And when he plays against people that are just flat out just better than him at what he does, like I don't know if he has a game plan that works enough to win. And then Let's see. So that leaves Wizzy and SFAT, and then next we have Axe, and Axe just unfortunately is Axe is just unfortunately a I don't want to really blame his character, but at the same time, like, I really don't know what Axe's solution is to Hungrybox. And I think a lot of people go like, okay, like, he can beat Armada, but there's so many times when like Armada just like 3-0s him or 3-1s him that like we only remember the times like he takes him close. But like more often than not, like the Armada sets aren't very close. So like Armada and Hungrybox are just two big issues for him. And I'm not really convinced that Axe can beat Leffen or Plup. Like, every time Leffen and Axe play, like, it seems pretty one-sided. And most of the time when Plup and Axe play, like, it's pretty, like, one-sided. Occasionally, like, Axe gets close, but I just think Plup is too good. So you already have, like, 4 players in the top 6 that are, like, really bad matchups for you. And, like, he does have fun sets with Mango, and they're pretty close. And granted, I think, to be honest, like, more of those Mango Axe sets should have gone in Axe's favor. But still, I don't really call him a favorite against Mango either. I think, like, Axe probably wins, like, a quarter of the time. So that's not really good. The only person in the Big Six that, like, Axe does really well with is King. So, like, when you have, like, 5 really bad matchups and, like, 1 decent one, that kind of tells me that Axe still has a lot of work to do to belong in the top 6. It's not to say that, like, he's bad or anything. I think he's really good, and I think he's pushed Pikachu to his limits. Like in terms of like individuals pushing their characters, I think that I think he's done a lot of work, and he's done a really good job. I just think that he's going to have to think of solutions to different people. And it's more like not just like a solution to win once, but like he needs to be able to win consistently against the people at the top. And I'm not sure if Pikachu is the answer for these players, but I could be wrong. He seems to have an upper hand on King, but with all the players I mentioned, like, I don't know if he sticks to a young Link plan and tries to develop that, or if he goes Falco, he goes Marth. I personally don't like his secondaries very much, but I also don't know what the peak potential of Pikachu is against those characters I mentioned. So that's going to be a big issue for Axe. Now, in terms of those 3 players, I think those are the closest right now. I mean, you can toss in like people like SUJ, Chu, Swedish, like all those people from like 10 and below to be viable candidates to like be the next god, or quote unquote. But I actually like to look at improvement curves to see like who the next big player is going to be, because what tends to happen is like once a player gets to a certain like level of skill, if they plateau for a long enough time, it's really hard to say like, is this their peak, or can they keep relatively improving more? And with these players that have been top 15 for such a long time, it's like you guys can try to make an argument to me to say that like, hey, like this player is going to be the next god or whatever, but like you have to convince me, like, what are they doing different right now than what they have done in the past like 8 years? Like, so if you have a top 20 player that's been stuck there for the past 8 years, it kind of seems like lunacy to tell me that out of the blue they're not going to change anything, and all of a sudden they're going to be like a top 6 player. Like so to me, if I see a person get stuck in the top 20 for like more than like a couple years, that kind of tells me like they're not going to improve much more beyond that. And what you see is what you get, unless something dramatically changes. But at this point, I don't really see that with most people. Now, with that being said, Crush and Zain, their improvement curves have been really good and enticing, where Crush has went from like unranked to like 50s to like 20s and winning Holiday Bash. So because that improvement curve happened so quickly, I can see like immense potential for Crush to potentially get up there. Like, he's almost beaten Mango. Granted, like, he still has quite a bit of a gap against the Big Six, but like considering like where he was last year and where he is this year as a player, makes me tells me that if he can continue to develop that like improvement curve and like maintain that, then like he has the potential to become like a top 6, top 7 level player. Along those notes, I also have high potential in Zain, mainly because of his improvement curve as well. Like, we still don't know what the upper end of Zayn's skill level is, and for the fact that he's doing incredibly well against like the top 10 to 20 level players means that like he can, I don't quite know what his peak is. And to keep in mind, like, Crush and Zain, like, I'm not saying they definitely will get top 6, but like unlike the people who've been in the top 20 for years, like we don't quite know where their peak is or where they're going to settle. So that's why I say they have like more potential to climb up than the people who've been established for years, even if it doesn't happen right away. Like it's kind of like when you look at rookies in sports, you look at the development between like their first 3 years as like a rookie, sophomore, and junior in the NBA or whatever, and they continue to improve. So for Zain, for Crush, I just think he just needs a little bit more experience in those weird matchups. I noticed that he didn't really know what to do against Axe, and even just like there are just many situations where he just wasn't as good just because he didn't know what to do. For Zain, similar issues. He's just not experienced in many situations. Like when he plays against an unfamiliar matchup, it just seems like he's kind of lost. Although like his fundamentals are getting really good. That like he's just using good player skill to beat people, even if he doesn't know the matchup. So that's like a really big thing. And then one other thing I really like about Zain is that he's continually developing his tech skills. So like that even further extends the potential peak for him. And so that's like one thing I'm excited about. Now, if there were some qualms about Zain, I would also say sometimes he lacks discipline, where I feel like he kind of gimmicks a lot of matchups. Like, for example, like really just abusing pivot grab on the corner of the stage. I feel like once people begin to scout that out and go like, okay, like I have to worry about Zain, let's study some tape and see how he gets his openings. I think that's where he can get a little bit exposed, because I think for now, like I know a lot of people give Zain respect and give him his props, but I don't know how much people are analyzing his matches. So like, let's say you have a sports player, they've been on a hot streak for a little bit of while, and then now the scouting reports give you what he does and what he likes to do. I want to see how he does if his opponents know like his little tricks, because it feels like to me like he doesn't do as well in MDVA like he does out of region. So I feel like people who are very familiar with his playstyle do a lot better against him. So I feel like he could drop random sets in MDVA to random players, like not random players, but players that aren't ranked as highly as him nationally. And I also think that sometimes he could lack a little discipline, but I think that just comes with a little bit of experience. Sometimes he throws out moves and leaves himself really open when he doesn't need to. But overall, like I'm really impressed by Zain. And if we're to look at Zain and Crush, I think like there's a lot to be excited for. And I think, you know, if you are a team that's looking to buy cheap or buy low on a player for the potential that they might get to top 6 level, those are the 2 players you should really invest in. So those are my thoughts about climbing Mount Olympus, the future potential next members that can climb and be a part of that upper echelon in terms of the people who are closest now and people who I feel like could be the closest in a year or two.